What's up, guys? Welcome to the video. My channel name is College Football Frenzy, back here with another video today, and today I'm going to be breaking down the top 10 games of Week 4 of the 2020 college football season. As we get closer and closer to the college football season, it looks like some big out-of-conference games might not happen. Unfortunately, it looks like the season might be shortened down, but Week 4 starts to have a lot of in-conference games anyway, so a lot of these games I do think will happen, and there's a lot of entertaining matchups that really will have a huge effect on certain conference races or division races. So I think Week 4 is a pretty intriguing week overall. Got a couple in-conference matchups that will play a key factor in the just the conference race and even the playoff race. So it's a pretty big week of college football overall. Again, look at the date when I'm recording this. It's in May. Obviously, there might be a sleeper team that comes up from the ashes and does good, and then we have a good matchup that we don't know about right now. That's definitely a possibility. But as of right now, as of May of 2020, when I'm doing this video, these are the top 10 matchups that I have for Week 4. And again, it could change. Some of these teams could be bad, and I just don't know it yet, and others could be good. But as of right now, I'm going to be breaking down my top 10 matchups. And they're, like I said, a lot of good matchups overall. But without further ado, let's get into it. Start off with 10, make my way down to 1. Number 10, we have Ole Miss versus LSU. So probably not the most intriguing matchup. I think it's pretty clear that LSU is clearly going to be the favorite team here. They're defending national champions. They're playing at home against an Ole Miss team. Lane Kiffin's probably going to still try to figure out how Ole Miss is like, considering the coronavirus is going on. That definitely is going to hurt him with the team because, he needs time to get fit with the Ole Miss program, and this coronavirus thing has kind of derailed that. So that definitely hurts. So I think they'll be a little bit rusty in the first few weeks of the season, Ole Miss. And again, it's an away game at Death Valley. LSU lost a lot of talent, but they still got a great recruiting class and a great head coach. So I'll take the LSU Tigers here. But Lane Kiffin, he's a decent coach. I'm sure they'll get some decent wins, but I don't think it'll happen right here. So this is my 10th game. Again, it's probably one of the more, it's one of the few in-conference matchups in the SEC, so that's why I did have it on here. There aren't that many in-conference matchups in the SEC, so because it was an in-conference matchup, it got on here. Number 9, we have TCU versus SMU. So rivalry game here. I believe both these schools are in the greater Dallas area, if I'm not mistaken. SMU is in the American Athletic. That's a group of 5 conference. TCU in the Big 12 currently. This game, I think it could be very even overall. SMU looked like a very good football team at the start of the season last year. They started out like 6-0, 7-0. They were in the top 15. People thought they were looking really good. They had a couple games late in the season that could boost their ranking if they were to win, but unfortunately they disappointed big time at the end of the season. They lost to Memphis in a close one. That was their first loss. It was on the road to Memphis, and obviously Memphis finishes a 12-2 team, so that wasn't really a shocker to anybody. It was a high-scoring game. SMU played really close, but nobody was very shocked by that. The big shocker came late in the season when they were losing to pretty average American Athletic teams, and they ended up getting destroyed in their bowl game against the FAU. So it was a completely, different ending of the season compared to the start of the season. Just completely different. Two halves of the season. One went great, one didn't go so great. So definitely a little bit of a disappointing ending of the season for SMU. Here at home, going to be looking to bounce back, try to get a big win here. I do favor TCU in this one, but I expect it to be a pretty competitive game overall. It's a rivalry game. I think it should be fun. I could see either team winning this. I think it should be, high scoring, fun game overall. So I have this right now as my 9 game. Overall, though, it probably won't catch too many eyes right now. That's why I only have it 9. 8, Virginia versus Clemson. So I have this on here mainly because it's probably the biggest matchup in the ACC that week, and also it's the rematch of the ACC championship game from last year, in which Clemson obliterated Virginia. Nobody was surprised about that, but still, they absolutely destroyed, and I mean absolutely destroyed Virginia. They tore them apart. For this upcoming season, Clemson's at home, clearly the more talented team. Virginia's losing Bryce Perkins, but overall, we still have to admit that they were a decent team last year. They can definitely compete with some other decent ACC schools, so I at least expect them to be a decent team in the ACC next year. Again, losing Bryce Perkins hurts definitely, but they should be overall a decent team. And Clemson early on the season, usually in one of their first ACC games of the year, they usually do have some trouble. They're a little bit rusty. I think it was Syracuse in 2018 they struggled a little bit with. I think, actually they blew out NC State, but in 2018, Syracuse they nearly lost to. In 2019, obviously UNC they nearly lost to. In 2017, early on the season, they did lose to Syracuse. So usually in one of their first ACC games, they do struggle a little bit, Clemson, I think because they're a little bit rusty. So, Virginia could give Clemson a challenge here, but I expect Clemson to win still. Utah versus Cal comes in next. So this matchup overall I think should be pretty intriguing. Cal is definitely the middle of the pack team, the Pac-12. They started out pretty good last year. I think they started out like 3-0, 4-0 or something like that. Then they dropped a couple of their last games. They ended up winning their bowl game, but still overall, it was a disappointing end of the season. They definitely could have done better. Utah, kind of the same thing. They were a little bit better overall than Cal last year, nearly made the playoff. If it wasn't for a loss in the Pac-12 championship game, they would have made the playoff most likely and faced LSU. Probably would have gone obliterated considering the fact that they got obliterated by Texas, who was 7-5 in their bowl game. So, it was probably a good thing that Utah didn't make up the playoff. But overall, this matchup should be intriguing. Utah is losing a ton of returning production. In fact, I think it's the worst returning production rate in all of college football. Their defense is losing a lot. They had probably one of the best defenses, if not the best defense in the Pac-12 last year, and they're losing a lot of guys on that defense, so that hurts. And they're also losing Tyler Huntley, their quarterback, and Zach Moss. So a lot less talented, but still overall, they've got one of the best coaches in the Pac-12 and Kyle Whittingham. I'm sure they can still find ways to win and definitely be a competitor in the South. And Cal can definitely be a competitor in the North, maybe get a few upsets against teams like Washington. So I expect it overall to be a pretty competitive matchup. I could see either team winning, but this is definitely a game in which Utah cannot underestimate. I think it'll be a good one overall. Next game up, South Carolina versus Kentucky. So big SEC matchup here. I think South Carolina needs this a little bit more than Kentucky overall because their schedule's a little bit harder. But it's a big SEC matchup. I think if South Carolina wins this game, they will be bowl eligible. They have 5 games that are probably wins, and then the rest of their games are most likely losses. This is the game that I think is kind of right down the middle that I could see South Carolina losing or winning. It is a road game. It's not going to be very easy, but it should be an intriguing matchup overall between two decent SEC East teams. I'm sure it'll be a competitive game, and again, Kentucky now having Joey Gatewood, who transferred from Auburn. That should be interesting to see. Obviously, they lost Lynn Bowden, but still, overall, they're going to be a decent football team, competitive. And South Carolina might not have the greatest record, but they'll be competitive. I know that. They always challenge, or at least last year, they challenged the good SEC East teams. Like, they beat Georgia, and they nearly beat Florida. So I expect a challenge, from South Carolina to Kentucky, and I definitely think either team could win this one. Arizona State versus USC very well could be the decider in who makes the Pac-12 championship game and who represents the Pac-12 South. I think the Pac-12 South overall is one of the most wide-open divisions in all of college football. I really could see 3 teams winning it. Obviously, Utah, who won it last year. I could see Arizona State, and I could see USC. I think the most likely option, I would say, is Arizona State wins the Pac-12 South. But USC, they're very talented. They've got a lot of experienced talent. Their recruiting class, that's terrible, but their experienced talent is good. The thing that worries me is how will Clay Helton do? He almost got fired last year. At least people thought he was getting fired this past offseason. He didn't, though. So I'm interested to see how he'll deal with this talent, if he can actually do something with it, or if USC will choke. But this is a big game for the Pac-12 South race. The winner, good chance of making it to the Pac-12 championship. Again, USC is at home in the Coliseum. They probably have a little bit more experienced talent. But again, Arizona State, they have Herm Edwards, a very good coach in my opinion, and they've got Jaden Daniels, who's a pretty good young quarterback. And they beat Oregon last year. They beat some decent teams. So expect a good fight either way. I'm very intrigued in this game, and like I said, it very well could determine who wins the Pac-12 South. Cincinnati versus Nebraska, one I'm very excited for. Nebraska, obviously, at this point, at most should have one loss. If not, should probably be undefeated. If they can beat Purdue at home, they'll be undefeated coming into this game. So it's definitely a big game for them. Cincinnati under Luke Fickell has done a great job overall. One of the best teams in the American Athletic Conference. They won their bowl game last year, had only 3 losses. And those 3 losses, 2 of them came on the road to Memphis, who was a top 20 team, and 1 came to Ohio State, who was, let's just say, pretty good last year. So Cincinnati, I think, had a great season under Luke Fickell overall. Expect them to be pretty decent again, compete for a American Athletic title. They're on the road this time at a tough place to play. Nebraska Memorial Stadium, never easy. I think Nebraska will be a little bit better than last year. Martinez, definitely needs to improve. But I think it still overall should be a competitive matchup, and I could see either one of these teams winning this game. If Nebraska somehow pulls off the season that people are expecting them to have last year, where maybe they win the West and maybe even win the Big Ten championship game, this is very hypothetical because it's most likely not happening. But if Nebraska was to maybe win the Big Ten, I'm just saying, and Cincinnati was to beat Nebraska and finish undefeated, then just maybe Cincinnati could have a very small chance at making the college football playoff. Again, that's very unlikely to happen. But this is a big game for Cincinnati, a big Power 5 game. They can make a statement here, and for Nebraska, they can make a statement as well. So big game. Nebraska probably has the better talent, but Cincinnati has done a great job under Fickell so far, and Nebraska currently doesn't have the greatest chemistry. Next up, a game probably most people do not know is happening, but it's actually a pretty good game overall. Miami versus Michigan State. I'm very excited for this one. I think it could be a game day location. Both programs clearly right now are not in their primes. Both had disappointing seasons last year, going through transitions. Obviously, Michigan State just lost Mark D'Antonio. Mel Tucker comes in. I think Miami clearly is more talented, especially on the defense, but also on the offense. De'Aaron King from Houston's coming in at Miami, potential Heisman finalist. So their offense should be a little bit better. Their offensive line's going to be a little bit more experienced. That helps, not as much pressure. And, I think the defense will be decent, and Ed Reed's coming in as the chief of staff. So I think, at least Miami's going to definitely be better. As for Michigan State, it's not an easy place to play. I expect them to be a little bit worse without Mark D'Antonio, but I still think it's going to be a competitive game, and I could definitely see either team winning this. Michigan State, I still think, was clearly better than Miami last year. So Miami taking a step forward just makes it really even. That's it. But, yeah, this is my third best game of the week. 2, Florida versus Tennessee. No doubt about it here. Tennessee has 4 really tough games. This is probably their best shot at getting a big win over a really good football team. It's at home in Neyland Stadium. They can definitely challenge the Gators. Despite having some tough losses against the Gators in recent history, they can definitely challenge them. They've got a top 10 recruiting class. Pruitt's doing good things with this program. They had a great winning streak at the end of the season last year. They'll probably have 1 loss coming into this point against Oklahoma, but should overall definitely be a competitive game at Neyland Stadium. Not going to be an easy place to play at for Florida. Florida's great talent-wise as well. Of course, they have Trask, great quarterback, one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC. And despite losing C.J. Henderson, their defense is still pretty good. So 2 really good football teams, 2 top 10 recruiting classes. I think the second and the third best teams in the SEC East. So it's going to be a very competitive matchup, and I'm very excited to watch this game overall. Definitely the SEC game of the week. All right, number 1 is Wisconsin versus Michigan. I definitely think this is the biggest matchup of the week. It's 2 very good football teams in the Big Ten, 2 top 5 schools in the Big Ten overall. Wisconsin, obviously, last year made the Big Ten championship and the Rose Bowl game, so they're a good football team overall. Michigan had a down year, but still overall a 9-4 record, so it wasn't that bad of a season. So this is an anticipated matchup. It's going to be in the Big House. Michigan's going to be looking for some big revenge. They got crushed by Wisconsin last year, obviously, in Camp Randall. It was an absolute embarrassment. So for this upcoming season at home, they're going to be looking to bounce back. And I definitely think they'll be in a better position to win for this upcoming season than they were last year. Wisconsin's still going to be a pretty good football team overall. I think they have a top 5 defense in the nation, the best in the Big Ten. The one problem is they're losing Jonathan Taylor, and I don't think Jack Cohen's that great of a quarterback. So the offense is not great, but the defense is still very good. I'm excited to see how they fare against this Michigan offense, who at quarterback should have Joe Milton, maybe McCaffrey, or maybe even if they get a little bit lucky, Maybe JT Daniels. Maybe JT Daniels is playing in this game. Although I don't know if he would get the start. What we would see. But maybe he goes to Michigan. He's in the transfer portal right now. So that's an option. But overall, it's definitely going to be interesting to see who, how this matchup shakes out, who's playing. But again, I think both teams overall are a little bit more on an even level for this upcoming season. I definitely feel like Wisconsin was better than Michigan last year. But for this upcoming season, I think Michigan can definitely have a bounce back year, and they don't lose that much at home whatsoever. They really don't. Besides Ohio State, they really dominate most opponents at home. It's a very intimidating place to play in the Big House. It's not easy. Only Ohio State can really do it that much, and obviously Ohio State's their rival, so it's understandable. But yeah, usually teams do not go in the Big House and win. Last time Wisconsin won the Big House against Michigan, Michigan got the job done. So it's going to be definitely, I think, a more entertaining game than it was last year. It will be probably a top 15 matchup, a very important matchup in the Big Ten race. So I'm excited to see how this one goes. But yeah, guys, that is it for now. Thank you for joining in. Please make sure to like and subscribe. Check out all my other videos. Share this content with your friends. And that is it for now. Thank you for joining in.